a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, here on the Star Cruiser Project Geekology, we're being attacked by the Separatists, but we don't have an army. Oh wait, somebody who died years ago that used to be a part of our crew actually ordered in a giant army. And yeah, so now we have an army.
Okay, so I have so many questions about the logistics of a clone army in Star Wars. Like, I was watching it this past week, and I'm kind of floored. Like, the biggest question is, who the heck paid for this? Sifo Dyas is basically like, he's just a Jedi. I think coming from the Dooku Jedi Lost book, it's either him, Dooku, and or Sifo Dyas that was like raised from royalty, but that's still not enough to buy like 1.5 million clones. Where did this come from? All right.
But yes, welcome to another episode of Project Geekology. We are on episode 26. And this week we are covering Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Ooh, highly rated on Rotten Tomatoes as the best Star Wars film ever. And if you do not realize that, and if you do not realize this is sarcasm, I am sorry. I am being sarcastic.
But, no. It's legit. I'm looking it up right now. 99% on Rotten Tomatoes. Best Star Wars movie, period. No,
is it really?
It's not. I have no idea what it is.
Oh my gosh.
I know it's
Dude,
widely considered the worst. But for the purpose of today's show, Attack of the Clones is the best. You know? Until we cover Revenge of the Sith, which will then be the best. So, so Attack of the Clones is amazing. You know, I cannot wait to dig into episode 26 of Project Geekology, where we go, maybe not scene by scene on Attack of the Clones, but we'll surely talk about the best scenes. I was like trying to piece together some things that I never really thought about, and I'm excited to like talk about and dissect on the show today, specifically with the fight scene at the end. But also the clone army, and also the relationship between Padme and Anakin, why it's so creepy, and more.
For those of you who are just coming onto Project Geekology, I am one of the hosts, Anthony, and the other person that is talking is
Dakota. And Anthony, we have a time-honored tradition on Project Geekology that before we get into the meat and bones of our topic of the day, we ask each other what we've been up to this past week, because as some of you know, some of you don't know, we live on opposite sides of the country. We never see each other, especially during the pandemic. So, Anthony, what have you been up to?
You know, I always do something during the week that's worthy of saying, man, I did this week, and then I always forget what it is.
Same here.
By the time it gets to podcast recording, I'm like, man, what is it that I did, and why can I not remember? Well, I mean, since our last recording, I watched Godzilla vs. Kong.
That's cool. That's something.
That's something that we are going to have to cover through the Monsterverse. Mm-hmm. But I want to cover the other ones before we actually get to that film. But yeah, no, there's that. I've still been on Monster Hunter Rise. I've been playing a little bit more Overwatch on PC. I actually found a little crew that I've been running with on Overwatch, so that's been nice. It's always fun to have a crew of people to play with on certain games. Overwatch is definitely a lot more fun when you have people to play with, because you can joke around and there's a little bit more coordination. Yeah, nothing crazy. I know that there's something else that I did that I was gonna say, but I can't remember, and I'm gonna remember after we record, as I always do, and I'm going to be upset with myself.
All right, so maybe I will jog your memory with what I've been up to.
Yes. What have you been up to? What is going on in the world of Dakota besides craziness?
Only craziness. That's the thing. That's my superpower. No, so Star Trek Legends is a new game that came out like a week ago. It's a new gacha game. You know me and my gacha games. But this one is free-ish. You know, it's through the like Apple Arcade, which I think it's like a $5 a month thing. I don't know if I'm going to keep it going just because I already have too many streaming services. But it's $5 a month, and it gives you access to like 90 new games that just came out, and one of those is Star Trek Legends. It's one of those games that plays like a gacha, but also doesn't at the same time, in the sense that you never run out of energy, so you could, technically play forever and not like waste time waiting for your energy to renew. You don't have to pay for any tokens. Everything that you can get is free to play in the actual game, which is something I like. It has a little bit of a story to it. It kind of takes some of the main characters from a bunch of different Star Trek series from across the years. You have some from the original series, you have some from the Next Generation, and then you have some new ones from like Discovery or the Picard series. And it's okay, it's okay. It's not something I think I'm going to continue playing, but it's been fun, and it's worth mentioning because it's a different feel for a gacha game, in the sense that you don't have to pay for, you do have to, there is a technical, you have to pay to play with Apple Arcade, but throughout the game, you're not going to buy any in-game purchases, like you'll never see an advertisement in the game, which is something that I really appreciate. Other than that, last week I started, or not that I started, but I didn't mention it in last week's podcast because I totally forgot, but we watched the first Ewok movie, Caravan of Courage, and
yes.
I've never seen that before.
Oh, you've never seen it?
No.
So I remember watching those when I was younger, and I've always had a vague memory on those. There's various bits and pieces that I remember. The one part that I always remember, and I remember for the longest time, I was like, man, what movie was that from? Where one of the kids, he falls in the water and gets like stuck under the water. Yeah,
that was Caravan of Courage. That's the one I just watched.
Right. But for so many years, I remember there being an Ewok movie, and then I remember there being that moment, and I was thinking, are they connected? I remember that being a moment, but yes, I remember watching those movies, and they are largely forgettable.
Yeah. Some interesting special effects, though. I'm actually surprised by some of the special effects, like I forget what they're called or whatever, but there's little Tinkerbell type fairies in them that the special effect, considering it was in the 80s, was actually pretty good, especially on this extremely low budget piece of crap movie.
Extremely low budget, and then these Ewoks, they can speak basic, and
no, they don't speak basic. They don't speak basic. They're literally just Ewok.
Or am I thinking of the second one? I remember there being one where they were speaking English.
Okay, well, that wasn't this one.
Maybe not the whole time, but I remember there being moments that there was English being spoken by these Ewoks.
It kind of follows the outline of maybe The Hobbit, this movie. Not in the sense that it's anywhere near as good as The Hobbit, but it's the idea of just being jumping out of the frying pan and into the fire over and over and over again. So they would get themselves out of trouble, but by doing so they'd find another problem, and they'd walk a little bit and then they'd find themselves in another problem, and it's just it's really jarring and also nerve-wracking, and was really, sometimes it felt like Star Wars and sometimes it didn't at all. Instead of calling it a blaster, they called it a gun, but it still worked like a blaster. But sometimes it works like a lightsaber because it's a constant fire. It's really weird. Yeah, it's...
Watching those movies, they almost look like fan films.
Yeah. I mean, that would be a really well-done fan film. It just doesn't go anywhere.
And there are some really well-done fan films these days. Just think of... nowadays, if it were accessible back in the 80s, that type of fan film. But yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. There are moments where you get there's parts of those movies that they just take you right out of it, and you forget why you're watching it.
You can watch those on Disney Plus now. They just dropped them, both the two Ewok movies as well as the original Clone Wars shorts that were on Cartoon Network back in the day.
Oh, dude, I want to watch through that.
I've never seen that either.
That. I had seen bits and pieces, or I had seen episodes here and there. I didn't watch the show as a whole, but I have seen episodes of it. It was pretty cool. I want to watch through it again, but I do remember liking Clone Wars a little bit more, just because that style of animation was not always as common. You know, like that 3D animation. Yeah,
it was the same guy. The original like 2D one is the same guy who did like Samurai Jack and stuff.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so that style transfers over into his other works. But I wanna give that a shot. That would be really cool. But I also had the opportunity to listen to a couple books, but the most notable one was the audio drama that they created for Dr. Aphra. It's a Star Wars character that was created for the comic run in 2015, like after Disney bought the property rights. So it kind of follows the first couple volumes of the Star Wars comics and also the Vader comics. And she was a character that was aiding Vader in trying to figure out who the rebel was that blew up the Death Star. And it's like the journey of how Vader came to know that Luke Skywalker was the one who blew up the Death Star, and like he was going through his past basically, and Dr. Aphra's joining him and trying to figure it out. It's an interesting audio drama. It's not the best audio drama I've heard, but it's a cool retake on what happened in the comics, because that's a run that I really enjoyed back in the day. But so that's cool. If you ever get the chance to listen to Dooku Jedi Lost, that's a better audio drama in my opinion, by Kevin Scott.
Oh, you said Dooku Jedi Lost? Oh yeah, I've listened to that. Absolutely loved it. It was like listening to an episode of Clone Wars.
Wasn't it? Yeah, it's so cool. That's all I can think of. Oh, I started listening to a book by the YouTuber Daniel Green. I don't know if you have ever checked his work out. He does like a lot of fantasy reviews, and he's a booktuber. I've worked with him for a couple videos back in the day, just like a collab sort of thing, and now he finally has his first book out, so I'm starting that, and it's pretty good so far, so I'm excited to finish it. Yeah, so that's what I've been up to.
Nice.
Was I able to jog your memory at all as to what you've been up to this past week?
Not at all.
I am so sorry, Anthony. But with that being said, should we jump into Attack of the Clones?
Yes, we may. Attack it. Let's do it.
What if instead of Attack of the Clones, it was called Attack the Clones? And, it's just the Jedi learning about this clone army on Geonosis, or not Geonosis, Camino. And just tearing through these like chambers of like these incubated people about to be clones, and just destroying them, attacking the clones.
Attack them all. Did you want to do the beginning of this one, because the beginning is always like so forgettable to me?
Sure, I can do that if you would like.
Yeah, I mean I remember the intro, but there's like bits and pieces to the beginning that I remember when I'm watching it, but trying to think about it, I can't.
Alright, so with Attack of the Clones, it's interesting because it's one of the longer Star Wars movies. It's like 2 hours 26 minutes or something like that. I think the only longer Star Wars movie that there is Rise of Skywalker. And somehow they're the two most forgettable Star Wars movies. Like, I don't even remember what happens in The Rise of Skywalker, so it'll be good to finally get caught up on that when we do it on the podcast. Attack of the Clones is kind of the same in that there's a lot that goes on. There's a lot of story beats that have to happen for the big moments to happen. But a lot of it seems to be forgettable. But, I mean, I watched it yesterday and today. So, I started watching it yesterday. Then I finished it today. So, the movie starts in actually a really cool way. Like, what I always love is, like, how they introduce the galaxy after the credit roll in the beginning. As the credit roll begins and the Starscape like shows up, you see a couple ships flying into Coruscant's atmosphere, but they all do like a little flip as they correct their flight pattern to, I guess be like bottom down to Coruscant. It's actually a kind of cool concept that looks really cool at the start of the movie. So there's actually a lot of really beautiful scenes in this movie. One of the more tragic ones for me is the moment where like a young Boba is holding the head of Jango Fett in the helmet, and he kind of like puts it to his head, and it's just like chaos in the background. That's just like a lot of beautifully... You could tell it was like great concept art that introduced or influenced certain scenes, and I love that kind of stuff. But anyway, we're entering Coruscant at the beginning of the film, and the ship that docks there gets blown up, and one of Padme's handmaidens, Corday, is destroyed with that ship. So someone is out to get Padme's life, basically. She is being hunted down. We kind of cut to a scene where the Jedi are talking to Senator Palpatine, and they're trying to figure out how to stop something or other. I don't really know. The Senate needs some new power or some new... There's so much like political intrigue that doesn't interest me at all.
Right.
Those are the scenes I'm like, just like, on Instagram or Twitter on my phone. Yeah, so Padme kicks the door down and says, "You guys better protect me or else." No, but she kind of is very stern in that moment. Obviously, her friend just died for her, like at her expense, so she's hugely distraught. But
right.
Yes, she's sent to stay in some tower or apartment or other. I don't think it's her actual bedroom or anything. Or no, it might be actually, because the Jedi go to meet her there. And yeah, so Anakin and Obi-Wan are sent to be her bodyguards.
Right. And this is where we have an older Anakin that's played by Hayden Christensen instead of Jake Lloyd, because the filming between episode 1 and episode 2 is shorter than the actual year gap between episode and episode 2. And so we have Anakin. He's sweating his meeting with Padme for the first time in 10 years. And we have Obi-Wan. He's joking, and like in that moment with him joking, I could see like a quick flash of like old Obi-Wan right there. Alec
Guinness Obi-Wan?
Yeah,
it's interesting how that starts creeping into his personality with the second film, and even more so in the last film. He's much more stoic and stuff. But I guess you can understand that after, he lost so many people in the war, basically, over the years. Right. Yeah, it's actually quite a funny little, like, almost like a father-son sort of scene, but they're Jedi, so they're not supposed to have that connection, but, you spend enough time with another person as, a master and apprentice, and you start to develop those feelings or that relationship with one another. So he knows Anakin is sweating this moment with Padme, and for whatever reason, Anakin has these thoughts for Padme. I mixed Anakin and Padme and came with anime. He has had these thoughts for 10 years, apparently. So this is, if the Phantom Menace occurred in 32 BBY before the Battle of Yavin, then this occurs in 22 BBY, which would also correlate with the start of the Clone Wars, which would end 3 years later in 19 BBY. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting that, like, he has been so fixated on Padme. He's been dreaming about her, and she hasn't changed once in my dreams, or something like that. And she barely recognizes me, Jar Jar. And so also Jar Jar makes an appearance in this scene, which is interesting. We talked a lot about Jar Jar last time, but he's an interesting character in this one. He's a lot more subdued, a lot less silly. He still fumbles with his words at some point. I think he's addressing the Senate, and I forget which two words he mixes together, but he flips the first letter of the first and last word, and nobody laughs. And I'm thinking to myself, if this was like the actual like any organization, I think they would get a laugh out of that, but they're probably so sick of Jar Jar after all these years that they just like let him finish.
I know, but he's nowhere near the character that he was in episode 1. He's not as much of a bumbling fool. They probably did that because of his reception.
100%, which is interesting because I want to know what the original treatment would have been for Jar Jar, or like what his role would have been in the rest of the prequels had he not had such a failure from the first film, because it's pretty clear like they failed with that character if they got rid of him so thoroughly in the following two sequels, Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. But he does live, he's still around, and he's influencing the galaxy at large.
Yeah, he is, with his drunken master ways.
Yeah, his drunken master ways have he's fallen right up that ladder into a Senate position. How he did that,
I know. I was gonna say, like, I mean, how else could somebody go from bumbling fool to bombad general to senator for the Naboo?
He's one of those, and seriously, like, he has, like, people will fall down the ladder, but he's one of those rare individuals who, like, got his job by falling up it. And he's a close friend to Padme. They're both senators from Naboo, technically. Even though he's a Gungan, he would just be, I guess, the senator for the Gungan people. I don't know how it works. But
right, like both, the voice for them.
Yeah, they're both senators from Naboo. So they have that in common. And he spends time with her as she is in lockdown after the assassination attempt. What do you think about the exchange that Padme has with Anakin and Obi-Wan when they first show up?
I don't think that, like, she was really selling too much on, like, the happiness. Maybe she was trying to stay in senator mode without being too, like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy to see you, while she was still, like, she was out in the open and, still kind of in, I don't know. I just felt, I don't know if it was the acting or if that was how she was supposed to be.
Do you think that she had any feelings for Anakin in that moment?
In that moment, not at all.
Not at all, right? And he's, like, totally floored by it because he's had this crush on her for years, and it's developed into an obsession, clearly, because he is super overbearing with her the whole movie and stuff. But so yeah, he's frustrated. He's, like, talking to Jar Jar about it, and Jar Jar, Annie, we're so happy to see you. Stuff like that.
I know Jar Jar is, like, clearly happy.
Yeah.
And probably only the only happy person there.
Well, I mean, it's understandable, though, because Corday, imagine your bodyguard that you've been with for 10 plus years has just died because someone's trying to assassinate you. That's kind of that I would be distraught for at least the day, probably much longer than that. But for the sake of these movies, like Star Wars in general, people don't stay distraught for people for long periods of time. We know Luke Skywalker, he looked at the remains of his family homestead, his uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, their smoldering corpses, and went off to fight a war and never thought about them again. So, yeah, people don't mourn losses like they used to. Unless you're Vader. Then you're in like a deep funk for over 25 years.
Yeah, unless you're Vader, to which you become a Sith Lord for love.
We'll be back after a quick break.
I hate talking.
Do you love talking about any topic and are never frustrated during conversations? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if there are topics that you avoid, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know the definition of every word others use? I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you are curious about the definition and historical usage of words, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know about current events and other random topics? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you enjoy conversations on a variety of topics, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Listen to I Hate Talking wherever you get your podcasts.
Episodes drop every Thursday. Listen, like, and follow I Hate Talking today.
Yes, for love, of course.
Sith Lord for love. Oh man.
All right, so let's get out of this
this little like pocket universe that we went into.
Yeah. All right, so they're like waiting outside of Padme's room. She's turned the cameras off. It's really funny to me that she didn't want Anakin looking at her while she's sleeping. I would do the same thing if I were Padme. Like, I'm gonna turn these cameras off tonight. Anyway, yeah, and Anakin's like, oh, don't worry, I can sense everything that goes on in this room with my force powers. And okay, it's kind of creepy. It's really creepy, actually. Like a lot of the stuff that Anakin does in this movie is just like
like very obsessive.
Yeah, he's very obsessive, and
obsessive and possessive.
There's another attempt on the senator's life. You want to talk a little bit about that? I've always thought that scene was pretty cool.
So yeah, there's another attempt on Padme's life with these gigantic earwigs and
earwigs,
gigantic earwigs. No, they're I forgot what their actual names were. I remember looking them up, but yeah, they're these like venomous worm or venomous like centipede things.
Yeah, they look like centipedes.
I know. Yeah, they kind of reminded me of those centipedes from King Kong 2006.
Oh yeah, huh?
I mean, even though this movie was before that, I don't know, like watching the film yesterday made me think of that. So yeah, Obi-Wan and Anakin sense them when they're about to strike, and Anakin and Obi-Wan come in. Anakin kills those worms, and Obi-Wan sees this droid hovering at the window, and he like jumps and grabs this droid, which is actually like a very Anakin thing to do. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about that. I was like, he's always talking about Anakin doing stuff like that, and he just did it right there.
It's almost like a do as I say and not as I do type thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so, Anakin, he goes out, he gets a speeder, goes after Obi-Wan. Yeah, I mean, just in time because the droid gets shot down by the person that's trying to assassinate, or the person that was hired by the actual person who was hired to assassinate Padme.
Yeah, there's a whole chain of command here that they're trying to suss out, and it's actually a really cool scene. It's one of the more memorable scenes in Attack of the Clones, in my opinion. And I think it was supposed to kind of be the equivalent of the pod racing scene from the first movie.
Right. And there's something about that scene that is very reminiscent to, in a weird way. I think maybe because of the floating speeders and in the city setting, it kind of makes me think a little bit of Fifth Element.
Yeah, it has that Fifth Element, that Blade Runner feel.
Right.
It kind of merges a lot of different sci-fi, a lot of different sci-fi elements from previous movies that they took inspiration from, and even more down the line, like the the scene in the arena is very reminiscent of, stuff that Lucas has been honest about being a inspiration for him, like John Carter and stuff.
Carter, there. This scene is very like cyberpunky, to be honest. Especially when, I do like the scene where Anakin catches Obi-Wan after the droid gets caught. And Obi-Wan's like, what took you so long? And Anakin's like, oh, well, I had to find a speeder that I liked.
There's so much good banter between Obi-Wan and Anakin.
There really is. And that's the one thing that I do have to say, that for all the faults that Hayden Christensen has, there is some chemistry for sure between him and Ewan McGregor, that they do have good scenes together. And this is one of those scenes that I enjoy, because Obi-Wan is like, if you spent your sword, or like if you spent time on your swordsmanship as you did on your wit, you would rival Yoda with a lightsaber. And Anakin's like, oh, I thought I already did.
He goes, only in your dreams, my young Padawan.
I know.
I love that. There's so many great little lines in this scene, and even like the sound effects, like going back to what I was saying earlier, are very reminiscent of the pod racing scene, where it was just like super sound effect heavy. And this is also very super sound effect heavy, because you have so many Morse ships going by and aliens going, what the? And, Jedi poodoo.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. And I thinking back on that scene, I can actually hear the speeder that they're in. Yeah. And then I like that they're chasing down the bounty hunter, and Anakin goes for like a shortcut, and they like lose him, and like Obi-Wan's just like so pissed. He's like, well, that's some shortcut. He went completely the other way. And then Anakin just like jumps off.
I hate when he does that. Yeah. And Anakin's like, this is a shortcut, I think. There's so many good little things in this scene worth talking about. Another one that I found like was really interesting later on in the series, obviously, in like A New Hope, Obi-Wan doesn't like flying, and it's like, but he doesn't express that at all in The Phantom Menace. And later on, like throughout this, like as time goes on throughout the prequels, he steadily grows a hatred for flying. And by the third film, like I think it's the opening of the third film, he's just like, I hate flying, or something like that. But in this scene, Anakin like talks about, I thought you hated flying, and he's just like, well, I don't hate flying.
No. Anakin's like kind of like going all about, and Obi-Wan says something, and Anakin's like, oh yeah, I forgot you hate flying. He says, I don't mind flying, but what you're doing is suicide.
Yeah, so he starts becoming a grumpy old man by this film, and like over the course of his years as a Star Wars character, he eventually hates flying. So I liked that a little bit too.
Right. So Anakin has he latches onto, well, he pretty much skydives onto the speeder of the bounty hunter, and kind of has like a scuffle. Uses his lightsaber to kind of cut into the systems, or like try to stop the bounty hunter. And
Zam Wessel.
Zam Wessel gets his like lightsaber knocked out of his hand, and to which Obi-Wan catches. Anakin, he grabs the blaster and shoots into the console, so he jumps off onto this landing, and the speeder crashes. Obi-Wan catches up with Anakin, and Anakin reveals that it's a female changeling. And
I think he is a she, and I think she is a changeling.
Right. And so they go into this bar, and then this is like more confirmation of kind of like that cyberpunk vibe, especially when you go into there.
They definitely went for like a full-on like Akira or Blade Runner type world, and
yeah,
I love that. Have you ever seen Blade Runner?
Yes.
Dude, we should do an episode on Blade Runner.
Blade Runner, Fifth Element, all those. But yeah, I like that moment with Obi-Wan when he goes to the bar. But yeah, Obi-Wan tells Anakin to go look for the bounty hunter, and Obi-Wan's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go get a drink." And that dude that comes up to Obi-Wan asks him if he wants to buy death sticks.
You want to buy some death sticks?
You don't want to sell me death sticks.
I don't want to sell you death sticks.
You want to go home and rethink your life. I want to go home and rethink my life. Absolutely love that. It's just like peak Obi-Wan Jedi mind trick right there.
And totally Obi-Wan to like go and get a drink, which is again what he did in the cantina in episode 4. So just more callbacks, but also like we're getting more of his personality, his Alec Guinness personality coming to the fore. In this scene, we actually get a couple cameos in the background. I don't know if you caught any. When they are like stalking, or they're looking for Zam Wessel, they pass a couple people. One of them is George Lucas's daughter. The next one is Ahmed Best, who plays Jar Jar Binks. He's at the table there. And then when Obi-Wan sabers the blaster out of Sam Wessel's hand, Anthony Daniels, who plays C-3PO, like turns around. So, couple pretty, just I guess fun nods. I guess they were looking for people to inhabit that scene. So I'm sure most of the people in that scene are like, extras in the film that they just dressed up.
Right? They're just like, all right, we're gonna need you to dress up as this. It's like the same people over and over, but just dressed up in other costumes and prosthetics.
Anyway, so they catch up with Zam Wessel. She is about to give them some sort of information as to who the bounty hunter is, but then she gets shot by some dart that they don't know at this point what it is or where it comes from, and she calls them Sleemos right before she dies. Famous last words.
Sleemos. But they ask her about they ask her who hired her, and she was actually about to tell them before she got killed.
Yeah, some bounty hunter named Sleemos.
He has
something
impeccable
like that.
Timing.
Yeah, I mean,
like right before his name was being said, she gets assassinated.
Yeah, I mean, Django probably a better bounty hunter than Boba.
I know, should have been the one that like did it to begin with, but maybe he didn't want it to get traced back to him, which it ended up being traced back to him. So
yeah.
Padme's assassin is stopped, or the one that was hired this time around was stopped. So Obi-Wan kind of goes around. He's trying to figure out what this dart is, where it's from. He can't figure it out through the droid, so he goes to his buddy Dexter
Jetster, the owner of the most sanitary diner in all of Coruscant. I made up that sanitary part. But a lot of people don't like Dexter. What are your thoughts on Dex?
Dex didn't bother me. I mean, the CG might have not have been the best, but it was not the worst CG that I had seen in this film.
It also kind of suffers just from age a little bit, because the CG is... I mean, we're much better at telling good CGI versus bad CGI at this point, almost 20 years later. And this scene is starting to show some of the cracks in like what they were capable of back then. But, he did his job. Why he knows what these Camino Saber darts are, we don't know. Yeah, so it kind of sends Obi-Wan on this journey of discovery, because he's already done some research on the thing. He can't find anything. Dex tells him exactly where the planet is, Camino. like it's 10 parsecs out of the outer rim. So it's pretty far out there, but he gives them, he knows the quadrant and everything. He knows where it's supposed to be, but for whatever reason, it's not in the Jedi archives. And it's kind of weird when he asks the librarian, Jocasta Nu, like, if it's possible that this planet or system doesn't exist, because as Star Wars fans, we hear of these worlds, and there's only maybe 70 or so that are recurring, that
right.
And Camino is one of them. I think it shows up again in Clone Wars and stuff. So yeah, it definitely shows up in Clone Wars because that's where the clones are. But yeah, I really like the journey of discovery that Obi-Wan goes on. I like the idea of going on some sort of Easter egg hunt, or not an Easter egg hunt, but you know what I mean. Like, it's a trail of breadcrumbs that he's following to determine the authenticity of Dexter Jettster's information that would lead him to this planet. And he goes all the way up the chain of command, I guess, because Jocasta Nu doesn't know anything and is kind of like snobby about it.
I know. Yeah, I was about to say that. Like, she got like really salty about that. She's like, if it's not in the archives, it does not exist. It's like, well, dang, I didn't realize you knew about every single planet exists ever.
Well, no, and that's the thing. She even admits to that, like, right beforehand, because she goes, it's not a system I'm familiar with, which means that there are other systems that she's not familiar with. So, yeah. So, I mean, there's a whole mess of problems with Jocasta Nu there. I kind of feel bad for her apprentice, just because most apprentices in Star Wars go on adventures like Obi-Wan and Anakin did. They go to different locations, but characters like Jocasta Nu were stuck in the library and on Coruscant. So most of the journeying that they did as a master and apprentice was right there, mostly in the library, mostly in the Jedi archives. So you kind of have to have a personality that fits that mold if you're going to enjoy your stay as a Jedi and an apprentice to Jocasta Nu, because I kind of felt bad for that kid.
I know, seriously. She's probably thinking like, oh, you want to go on an adventure? Go read that book.
Go organize our holocron section.
Right.
Yeah, but that's the extent of like.
You want to be riveted? Here, organize this.
Yes.
So he goes to Yoda about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so Yoda, this moment was definitely like for children, because
okay. All right, I see what you're saying.
Because they go in and he's like, he shows Yoda, who's in the middle of class with younglings, and he's like, there's a planet that's supposed to be here. There's a gravitational field, but there's no planet here. And then Yoda's like, he's like, all right, class, well, if the gravitational pull is there, but there's no planet there, or no planet showing, then what's the problem? And then one of the kids like, well, somebody deleted it from the archives. It's funny because it's like, well, if there's a gravitational field there and you don't see the planet on the thing, there's obviously something there. If there's some sort of gravitational field. So you might as well just go there to check it out to begin with. Instead of like going around wasting time. But like, I mean, that was like a moment for kids. It was a very this dog is brown. Like, trying to teach a kid to like, be deductive.
Well, I mean, I kind of like that though, because Yoda has been working with younglings for a very long time. Even in the High Republic period, you haven't met Yoda in that period yet because you've only read Light of the Jedi, but in the High Republic Adventures that is written by Daniel Jose Older, it shows that Yoda has been basically working with a group of Padawans, and they're doing like side quests across the galaxy.
Nice.
Kind of like what he's doing here at the Jedi Temple with the younglings. But the group he's working with in High Republic is a little bit older. maybe a couple years older than those, and they're actually out on adventures, fighting the Nihil and stuff, which is pretty cool. But I appreciate that he is so fond of children.
Yeah, that is good. I just think that the structure of the moment was just very...
I can see what you're saying. It's childish.
It was childish, but it kind of disrupted a little bit of a rhythm that was there.
Maybe.
It disrupted the mood that was there. The fondness, I do get what you're talking about. The fondness of building a young mind was great.
I also think Yoda was actually a part of Yoda's whole thing was, asking questions and seeing what others thought of those questions, and that would either solidify whatever he was thinking in his mind, or he would learn something new. And I think you can really do that with children because they ask questions and they see the universe in different ways than we as adults do in certain instances. And for whatever reason, Obi-Wan kind of knew what had happened, but he needed just that extra confirmation, and I kind of like it's almost a Jesus parallel. In the book of Mark, they talk about people were bringing children up to Jesus, and the apostles reprimanded them because it's Jesus. He's got more important things to do than talk to children, and Jesus reprimanded them because no, let them come. This is you have to be like children to understand these things. And I kind of think that because Lucas was a Christian, so I think that he took those ideologies and placed them into, we know that he placed them into Anakin in the Phantom Menace, because they made him kind of like a messianic character. He had no father and stuff. But those ideals, those ideologies, I think, are sprinkled into certain other characters, like Yoda. I think that that's a big one.
Right. And there's actually kind of like a parallel while Obi-Wan is going on this investigation. Anakin is sent to Naboo with Padme to kind of, be her bodyguard so she can go off-world of Coruscant because she was in danger there. So he was watching over her, and she went to a place that she was familiar with and that she would be, safe. So this is happening along that same moment. You get a better glimpse of Naboo and Naboo's countryside, which is very beautiful. And I don't know if you've seen any of the deleted scenes for this movie.
I watched them recently. A couple months ago at this point. And it's actually pretty fascinating, some of the stuff that they deleted. And I understand why they deleted it, just because, it didn't really add anything to the story beyond character development for Padme and her family.
Right. So they deleted some stuff between Padme and her father and Anakin, and then her talking to her family. And they even had a deleted scene where it showed Obi-Wan going to the droids to get the saber dart analyzed.
Oh, I don't remember that one. Yeah, that's the one I don't remember.
Yeah, they had a scene with that. So they had a couple of deleted scenes from Anakin's moment with Padme and Naboo, and so there was a little bit. There's that growth between their relationship, while Obi-Wan is, he's doing his investigation.
And it's kind of interesting when you talk about some of the deleted scenes and thinking about why they deleted them. Because they're not bad scenes per se. Some of them are actually quite heartwarming or kind of influence future scenes down the line. But, as a filmmaker, you have to make those choices. You have to make those cuts at some point in your movie if you're going to make it a reasonable amount of time or a reasonable length for the movie to be. So Attack of the Clones was kind of overburdened by its length. And I think Attack of the Clones also has some of the most deleted scenes, some of the most substantial deleted scenes. Whole whole like set pieces, whole chapters were deleted, and especially on Naboo.
Yeah.
But when it comes to stuff like the droids analyzing the saber dart, I kind of understand why they got rid of that in particular. I do understand it, and they talk about it in the diner scene where they like Obi-Wan already tells Dex that he had the droids analyze that and they couldn't find anything. So we didn't actually need to see that because he was going to tell them anyway, so
right.
We can just kind of roll with those punches as they're being rolled out. So I totally get that. Yeah. So I mean, they're on Naboo, and it's kind of weird because we skip out on the scenes with Padme and her family.
It's this one right here. Deleted scene, Jedi Temple analysis room.
Okay, Anthony's showing some deleted scenes to me. Are you on what is
Disney
that, Disney Plus? I didn't realize it. I forgot that the scenes were on Disney Plus.
they had them on Disney Plus. They have also like one for this.
Oh, cool. So there's a bunch of deleted scenes, guys. If you want to check it out, he's showing me one that's a raid on the droid control ship, an extended arena fight scene that's 3 minutes long during the Geonosian arena battle. So there's a bunch of deleted scenes for Attack of the Clones. And what's so great about Disney Plus, I think that they've totally hit the market for replacing physical media. And the biggest problem with streaming in the past for me was the fact that you don't have those special features that existed on DVDs and Blu-rays.
Right.
Netflix doesn't do that. At least they haven't historically. But since Disney Plus has been out, they've had a huge focus on documentary stuff. Jen and I are going through a documentary series called Into the Unknown, where it's like a 6-part series on the rush of them like making Frozen 2, the movie. And it's fascinating, like the amount of work that goes into it. But it's a strictly Disney Plus thing. So Disney Plus is really good when it comes to special features. It's really good when it comes to cast interviews and stuff like that. Like the fact that they had a Mandalorian series where it was like an 8-part series where they just talked about the making of the Mandalorian is so Disney Plus that I wish other services did that as well.
It was very fascinating, though, the technology that they developed for that show, that they included that. So yeah, that deleted scene on the raid on the droid control ship and the arena battle, it's not all of the scenes in it are finished. Mm-hmm. So it's hilarious.
Wait, why?
Because like some of the moments are like
just really bad CGI, or
like pre-rendered and like drawn out scenes and stuff. And yeah, dude, you need to watch it. Like there's parts of it that are like really funny. Okay, so where were we? We were like we were talking about that. We were talking about the split.
Oh, well, we were talking about Naboo and the Naboo scenes in general. And I think I think Naboo is actually lessened by the fact that they removed the family scenes from there, because at the end of the day, it just seems like one big honeymoon trip for Padme and Anakin, because they're just all alone in these beautiful fields playing with random animals, picking flowers, doing cartwheels,
talking about boys in school and
talking about old crushes. Dude, it's just a romance like sequence for like a good 10 minutes, and it's but that's where we really start to hear the theme motif of this movie, which is Across the Stars. And I think like each of the movies has their own little theme that is unique to it, and Attack of the Clones has Across the Stars, which is the most used like motif for a single film in all of the saga. It's kind of hard to explain that concept, but just the love song between Anakin and Padme is played throughout the movie more times than, say, the Han and Leia movie, or the Han and Leia theme is played in Empire Strikes Back, or it's different stuff.
Right.
So that's, I do love John Williams' score. I love all his scores, but Across the Stars is a very lovey-dovey piece that's it sits well with me. I like it a lot,
and it's very obvious for what it's trying to set, like what mood it's trying to set.
Yeah, but it's kind of so it goes from really flirtatious date on really beautiful vistas to like a dark scene in
I know,
Naboo.
with her wearing that.
Yeah, she's wearing like a corset that's like pushing her up, and she's like all dressed up to the nines, and Anakin's like they're like in this darkly lit room, and Anakin's like he's talking about how he's got this burning passion for her, and it's eating him from the inside, and Padme's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And at this point in the movie, she clearly has feelings for him, but I don't know I don't know what it is, because they really haven't spent that much time together. Obviously, she knows that he cares for him, and she knows that she cared for him when he was a young boy. What was he, 9 in Phantom Menace? So
You're right. I think he was supposed to be 8 or 9, and then the second film is 10 years later. But I believe that she was supposed to be 14.
She was supposed to be 14, yeah, in the Phantom Menace. So if we take that to 19 and 24 is a lot more understandable than 9 and 14. But yeah, anyway.
I know, isn't it crazy that age gap at that such a young age compared to when you get a bit older?
Yeah, after 18, it's really just a number. But when it comes to their age disparity, it seemingly shrinks, because even though she has way more life experience and stuff, she sees him as a man now. Right. Even though, but there's some really annoying Anakin moments in this movie. The scene where she's talking to the current queen of Naboo, and the queen says something about maybe this Jedi Knight will, and Padme goes, "Oh, he's not a knight. He's just a Padawan in training," or something like that. And Anakin's "Excuse me, my lady."
The guy, I forgot his name. He's like, so what do you think, Master Jedi? And she's like, "Oh, he's not a master. He's a Padawan learner." And then she goes on to say what they're gonna do, and he's like, "Excuse me, milady, but I'm in charge of security." And she's like, "Well, this is my home. You should want to listen to what I have to say since I know it so well," or something like that,
Yeah, and everyone around them is just like,
awkward.
This is weird.
Yeah, it's very awkward. Yeah. I was like, dude, I would have hated that moment.
All right, so Anakin has dreams of his mother being tortured and attacked, and keeps him up all night. And in the morning, Padme walks out on him, and he's doing this weird leg stretch thing.
He's meditating.
Over. Yeah, he's in his meditative stance. But he divulges to her that his mother is in danger. He felt her. They make the concerted effort to just up and leave. Which I appreciate with Padme. I don't mean that she's willing to get her hands dirty, but when push comes to shove, and she realizes that something is worth doing, she will do it even at the expense of her own safety. So she's leaving the safety of Naboo, where she knows that she's protected, to go chase for Anakin's mother, who she just has to blindly believe that he knows that she's in danger, just from this nightmare that he's had. Right. So they go to Naboo, or they go to Tatooine.
They head over to Tatooine. This is the first time that Anakin had been to Tatooine in such a long time. So him and Padme, they go up to Watto. to find out where his mother is, and Watto doesn't notice him at first, and then realizes who it is, and it tries to get Anakin to like talk to some people that owe him money. He's like trying to use him. He's like, "Hey, you want to use your Jedi ability to intimidate some people?"
Yeah, what's interesting about that scene is Watto has clearly like fallen on bad times. You know, he's still the same like scumbag from the first movie, but now you kind of pity him a little bit because, you know, like flies are flying around him. He clearly is like he stinks. He hasn't shaved in a while. He doesn't look like he has any slaves, which, you know, is a good thing. But for him and his livelihood, it's not. So he's in a bad place. And I think like he gets this like look of surprise when Anakin shows up, and you know he's just like, "Oh, can you help your old pal out?" And Anakin just like, "My mother, Annie, it is you."
Yeah, so this is where they find out that Watto had sold his mom to a moisture farmer named Lars, and that he freed her and married her, which is a great thing. So yeah, they go out to the Lars homestead, and this is where he finds out that his mother was abducted by Tusken Raiders, the Sand People, and they hadn't seen her in a month, right?
That's what they said, yeah. And you know, Klieg is handicapped because of it. What's cool is the first novelization I ever read for any book or any movie, period, was Attack of the Clones. And this was like way back when the movie first came out. So I think I actually read the book before seeing the movie. And,
really? Attack of the Clones?
It might have been shortly after. It was definitely still in theaters when I read the book. So this scene is interesting in the book because they talk about like how some huge raid party, and you know, in my head I'm picturing like a World of Warcraft raid. Actually, the World of Warcraft hadn't come out in the time, but in my head,
people.
Yeah, in my head I pictured this like as like a big raid party sort of thing, where like a bunch of villagers, including Klieg Lars, you know, went and attacked the Tusken Raiders, and that's where he lost his leg. And that scene is described pretty well in the novelization for Attack of the Clones. So I always visualize that when I see the movie, but it's not actually a scene in the movie. So it's kind of a weird thing.
Yeah, right? It really is.
Sometimes, like, when you watch, like, you know, Goblet of Fire, you picture certain scenes from the book that never made it into the movie, but in your head, they're played by the movie actors and stuff. So it's kind of a similar concept. But, yeah, so Anakin...
Dakota, stop breaking my heart. Because we all know that there's things that I wish that they had in Goblet of Fire, alright?
Yeah, there's Goblet of Fire was the worst adapted of all the books. But let's continue. So Anakin leaves his girl with his future godparents of his son. I don't know, what is their relation to Anakin at this point? No, so he's a half-brother to Owen, right?
Stepbrother. Oh, wait.
Stepbrother, yeah. Stepbrother.
Yeah, because I don't think his mother... Yeah.
No, his mother didn't conceive Owen, but married into that family. So I guess he would be a stepbrother, right? Yeah.
Right, and then Brew, it was his girlfriend.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so he leaves Padme with them, and he takes a speeder bike, and he traverses the dunes of Tatooine to find the Tusken Raiders. But you know, like, there's so many Tusken Raiders in Tatooine that you kind of assume he would have to like know exactly which ones these are, and I guess Klieg would have that information. So
he was talking to some
oh yeah, he talked to Jawas and stuff to like get like a better I guess, grasp on their location and stuff.
Yeah, so like he's trying to like figure out. We don't know exactly what he asked them, but yeah, he was talking to some Jawas, and
Are Sand People, are Tusken Raiders nomadic people? Because we know that they like travel like on Bantha back, and like they go in like a caravan type of way, and they also live in tents, which kind of lends to the idea that they're nomads that kind of like break down and pick up their stuff and like go somewhere else, which is probably why he had to talk to the Jawas in the first place.
Yeah, I would believe so. It makes sense for thinking back to A New Hope when Obi-Wan talks about how they walk single file to cover how many there are.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Forgot about that.
I know, it was like that small, like little like scene right there. Hey, but we're on the topic of Tusken Raiders, which...
According to an Alexa Answers contributor, Tusken Raiders, Sand People, are fictional creatures in the Star Wars universe. They are characterized as a nomadic race who live on the planet Tatooine.
Thank you, Alexa.
Oh my god.
Usually we cut Alexa out of our recordings, but this one we'll keep in because that was perfect.
Could you hear it?
Yeah, I could hear it. She's talking about Tusken Raiders. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was crazy. Which I was saying, speaking of Tusken Raiders, I liked what they did with them in The Mandalorian.
Yeah, they kind of humanized them. Well, they did humanize them, and they kind of made them out to not be such bad guys, and it's good to get together and like hang out with your distant neighbors.
Dude, I mean that first episode of season 2, man, like the way that they teamed up with the townspeople to take down that crate dragon.
We didn't talk about it too much in our Mandalorian season 2 discussion, not as much as I would have liked, but it was a really cool way that they brought the Tusken Raiders into like a new light. Like you had a newfound appreciation for them. So yeah, that's cool.
Right. And you've always seen them as these like savages, with like no sense, almost like animals. And we get up to this moment where Anakin, he gets to the camp where he finds his mother, and his mother dies. This is like a really big leap for him towards Darth. Yeah.
This is one of the darker moments in Star Wars where he finds his mother. The mother has somehow been keeping herself alive just for this moment to see her son one last time, and then kind of just dies in his arms. And it's kind of a tragic moment. Well, it is it's a tragic moment. It's not a kind of tragic moment, but it's a tragic moment for Anakin because he snaps. He has no restraints at this point. He kills all the Sand People, and he kills the women, the children. He killed the dogs. And knowing what we know from like Mandalorian, and obviously, common sense, you don't just murder a whole village, even if they do something terrible like, kill your mother. But he went off the deep end there. Yeah. What's even weirder for me is, he comes he comes back to the homestead, and he's like crying, and he's telling Padme, I slaughtered them like animals, not just the men but the women and the children too. And Anakin's like, or Padme's like, what does she say? She kind of brushes it off like it's only human, Annie. And I'm like, what are you talking about? This guy, your boyfriend, just killed like a village full of people, and you brush it off as if he, like if these were Gungans, would you brush it off, Padme? Like, they're not humans, sure, but yeah. So that was kind of a weird thing for.
That is pretty crazy though, thinking back how he did take them out, considering the Tusken Raiders have given people like issues. Like, I mean, it's not like, I mean, they can't really combat against a lightsaber, but there would be enough of them to where they could have overwhelmed him. So just thinking on the fury that he had, that he was able to like take out all this like village, dude, that's crazy.
So there must have been at least 50 of them in this encampment, you know, not counting the dogs and stuff, or whatever those things are. Let's call them crate dogs.
Crate dogs, the mongrels.
All right, so let's jump forward. We're like kind of getting stuck in this first half of the movie. So Kenobi makes his way over to Kamino, and he discovers the Kaminoans, which are like the weirdest alien species in Star Wars. Not because they look weird, I mean, they do, but they're as far as you can go away from like the original series aliens that they introduced. Not the original series, the original trilogy aliens, you know? Like, these are fully CGI, you can't make these with puppets, you know, type aliens. And it's more like a Men in Black type of alien than a Star Wars alien. Which, you know, isn't bad. It's a big galaxy out there, whatever. So Kaminoans, they exist. They're cloners, damn good ones too. And they...
Okay, Dex.
They make some... Oh, I love Obi-Wan in this moment. I love his interactions with them, because he's just rolling with it. He's just like... Yes.
I know. I was about to. I was going to mention that too. That he's like, "Oh, you were expecting me," and he was so smooth. He was just going with it. Yeah. Like I love that. I love that moment where they like say something to him. They're like, "Oh, do you want to see the clones?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's why I'm here."
Right. And even before that, he's like, they're like, there's already 250,000 ready to go, and another million, you know, shortly thereafter, or something like that. He's just like, oh, great. And
and
they're
that's
like,
great news.
and you know, they talk about like Master Sifo Dyas being the one to order them, and like that's when he like kind of like chokes. Like, he's just like, Sifo Dyas has been dead for 10 years.
Yeah, right.
But then they tell him like we got the army that he you know, we have the army that he ordered. And what's up with these Kaminoans, dude? Like, who paid them to do this? And okay, so their whole planet, their whole people, like all their biggest output into the Star Wars galaxy is the fact that they're excellent cloners. And if this is like their biggest project yet, they've spent 10 years not hearing anything from Sifo Dyas, but they've just been going gung-ho, making this clone army for no one in particular.
They must have been paid
them?
well. Like, it had to have been like a huge deposit. Like,
but again, who is paying for this? Like, because it's not the Separatists. Dooku didn't know about it. It can't have been Sifo Dyas, because he's just a Jedi.
I do remember Jango saying that he was hired by Dooku. Because remember,
really?
He says, I was hired by a main... he's like, I was hired by a man named Tyrannus.
You're right. Alright, so... But that's weird, because Dooku later says that he doesn't know where they got the army from. If I remember correctly. I might be misremembering that then. I don't know. If that's the case, then the Separatists did somehow have their pockets. But no, that can't have been, because they wouldn't have like had a whole war for 3 years.
No. The Separatists were being played themselves. Like,
by
everybody was being
Sidious.
played.
So technically all of this probably falls back on Palpatine, right?
Right. Like, I'm pretty sure that it could have just been him posing as
maybe Sifo Dyas.
As Sifo Dyas, and even Dooku, you know, to approaching
yeah,
you
maybe.
know, or you know, who knows, like maybe
Jango does show up to aid Dooku at the arena battle, so he definitely was working with Dooku.
In
so
some kind of
checks
way.
out. Yeah, that checks out. But still, I'm just trying to figure out where the funds are coming from, you know? But I guess it's Star Wars, whatever. Funds were clearly made. I just love that, like, Yoda was like, well, we have an army, let's use it, you know? And he's the first to show up, like, on one of those battle cruisers with an army of clones.
Right. Obi-Wan, he meets, he sees these clone units, and he meets the man who provided the DNA for these clones, which is Jango Fett. And so he has a conversation with Jango Fett, and he also learns that Jango Fett had an altered clone for himself, you know, to have a son, which is Boba. So yeah, he does a little digging. He tries to figure out, like, hey, have you been to Coruscant, trying to, you know, figure out who was trying to kill Padme. And so he kind of hits a dead end right there. And then he catches Jango leaving with Boba, and they have an exchange, they fight. And you know, they're going through their little scuffle, and Jango he gets away. And
little Boba's kind of like a little sadist, because he's like cheering his dad on as he's like blasting this one guy just like on the dock. Clearly he's a Jedi, so he's powerful and can like block the shots and everything, but he's just like, get him, Dad, get him, you know. But I do like that scene a lot. I like the fact that Jango actually put up a really good fight one-on-one with a Jedi. He used all his stops, almost like a Batman type character, although he had like a jetpack and everything.
Right, and it's very much so. And I'm glad that that they brought some like clarity to like the whole like Mandalorian thing, because Mandalorians were, you know, they're very like strong warriors that can face them off. They have the means to face off against Jedi, you know, with the Beskar. And the fact that Boba's, you know, lineage, Jango being was it foundling? So
was Jango a foundling? I don't remember that.
They had mentioned it in season 2. Boba like showed that his like DNA code was like encoded to the armor or something like that.
Okay, all right.
And it was saying that like Jango is part of the Mandalorian culture. Okay.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and you don't remember that part?
I do now that you mention it, but I didn't remember that he was a foundling. I remember that Jango was Mandalorian,
right?
And because Boba is Jango's clone, like to the T, he would have the same genetic code as his father, so he would be able to use like the suit properly. I guess, I don't know.
I mean, in all seriousness, technically, it's him.
Yeah, it was
his father, quote unquote father, but it was really him. So, at the end of the day, he learned it under his father. So I would say, technically, he is Mandalorian. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right,
but let's move on. So yeah, Jango and Boba get away.
And one of the coolest sound effects in all of Star Wars, which they brought back for The Mandalorian, is when they are in the asteroid field and they do the seismic detonators. I think that's what they're called, and it's just like that.
Oh, seismic charges.
Oh, seismic charges. Yeah. And it's like that big blue explosion that like you hear like a second afterwards. It's like this.
They had to bring that back in The Mandalorian because people wanted that. It gets. I don't know if you noticed that it gets like super quiet like right before it explodes. Like it kind of like sucks in the sound and then it like explodes out.
It's kind of like a mini black hole of sound, and then it's just like a explosion, and it just the blast pattern is so interesting. So anyway, they think that they blow Obi-Wan up. He's clever. He's, hiding on the backside of an asteroid, and he follows them to Geonosis.
Oh, and then this is the moment where, like, when right before that, like, he's flying and he's being attacked by Jango, and then this is where he says, "This is why I hate flying."
Yes, you're right. Yeah. So they get to Geonosis, and this is where he sends a distress signal to the Jedi Order and also to Anakin and Padme, who are now on Tatooine, having killed a bunch of Tusken Raiders. And during the call where he's like calling for backup, he's attacked by some battle droids, some droidicas. And they, the scene cuts, the Jedi realize that, going back a little bit, I want to talk about this. Talking about Yoda and Mace Windu, they kind of have a repertoire in this movie where like they meet up several times in like their own little meditation center. I don't know if that's just them or like all the Jedi Masters do it, but during the scene where Anakin is killing the Tusken Raiders, they cut to Yoda like meditating, and you hear Liam Neeson like yelling, "Anakin, no!" He's like, you hear the Force Ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn.
Did you hear the Force Ghost?
Yeah, my dog. You see it right here. You hear the Force Ghost of Qui-Gon Jinn, like, screaming for Anakin to stop because obviously he's going down a dark path. But it's so cool because that's the first introduction of like the Force Ghost idea into the Star Wars like timeline. So that's pretty cool. But all right, back on track. Obi-Wan calls out for the Order to help him, and the Order like tells Anakin and Padme that they need to he needs to protect the senator at all costs. And Padme's like, it's funny because Anakin, he will obey the council sometimes, but other times when it's very personal to him, he disobeys. Oh, yeah. And he disobeyed when it came to protecting the senator, protecting Padme when his mother was involved. So when it was a personal thing, when it was an attachment, he disobeyed. And that's a pattern that he falls into, That was an emotional attachment that Jedis aren't supposed to have. And he broke his Jedi code to go save his mother, which, isn't a wrong thing to do. But it is the start of him breaking that code, basically, with the Jedi. So, right. Yeah. Padme realizes that Obi-Wan's in trouble. And again, she's cool. She's awesome. She decides this is more important than my safety. Let's go help Obi-Wan.
Right, she says
to follow him.
Right, because Anakin is kind of reluctant because of that. I mean, he wants to go, but she's like, "Well, I'm gonna go, and you're supposed to protect me, so you're just gonna have to go where I go."
Obi-Wan gets kidnapped.
Jedi
after
napped.
He kind of like he eavesdrops on a separatist get together or planning session or meeting, whatever you want to call it, and it's kind of like a weird, stupid scene that is just like one of my favorites. Like the guy who's just like, what's his name, Wat Tambor, who has like different like knobs on his chest, like
from the Techno Union.
From the Techno Union, yeah.
Like,
what does that mean?
The Techno Union is under your control, or something like that. Yeah, I know. Like he's like the Techno, and he's like turning that knob. I'm like, dude,
what's fine is like his voice was perfectly acceptable to start with, and then he started like wee wah. So yeah, that's a funny scene. But anyway, he gets kidnapped shortly after that, and Dooku is like trying to pretend like he's still on like Obi-Wan's side, but he's just doing a bad job at selling it. He's just like, "Oh no, there must be some mistake.
I know,
get this
right?
Fixed immediately." Yeah,
I know, right? Like it's like very obvious that it's like, okay, come on, dude.
Yeah, like why are
We don't
you
believe
even putting
you.
up this front? Like at least just monologue instead of doing whatever you're doing.
Yeah, just monologue. Yeah, that was a funny scene. You know, there's that moment where he talks about Qui-Gon. And what are your thoughts on that about Qui-Gon, where he was like, oh, I could use his help, and Obi-Wan's like, Qui-Gon would never help you.
I think two things. Qui-Gon was known as a Jedi that was as close to a gray Jedi as you had in this time period. You had Jedis that kind of like fell off, like Dooku and stuff, and he just did his own thing.
Yeah, he walked away to become the Count of... Was it Sereno?
Sereno, yeah. You're right. Yeah. He became the Count of Sereno, which is his family home planet. I can understand why Dooku would think that his Padawan, Qui-Gon Jinn, would join with him, because we knew Qui-Gon saw a lot of the faults in the Jedi belief pattern that he didn't really gel with. But I think Obi-Wan knew him better, or at least he had a more ideal aspect, or like fondness to his previous master, in the sense that he knew that Qui-Gon would never have done that, like, and actively sided against the Jedi or the Republic. What are your thoughts? I mean, do you agree with that, or do you think that where do you think Qui-Gon would have fell?
So yeah, no, I see exactly what you're talking about, because everything that I've read with Qui-Gon, especially with Master and Apprentice, he's gone against the Council's wishes, and not in the sense that, you know, he's like a Sith Lord, but in the sense that, you know, he'll do things that's not popular opinion, and a lot of the times he's right, or the way he'll go about something isn't the way that the Council wants him to do it, you know?
Yeah.
And it shows, and that Master Apprentice, he's very much the rule breaker, and Obi-Wan's the rule follower, which he does kind of stay like that to an extent until, I guess, like when we get to episode 1, he's kind of a lot more like Qui-Gon.
You're talking
at that point?
Obi-Wan. Yeah, he becomes more lenient. I think it's a matter of a mix of maturity and teenage angst in like episode 1 Obi-Wan. You know, like he's at those years where he's very flippant and his attitude is very angsty, but he's also, I don't know, he's like mature enough to like care about certain things. So I don't know, it's like Obi-Wan has a weird arc, but it's a noticeable one. But yeah, I don't think Qui-Gon would have sided with his former master.
Right. I think he would have tried to get down to the bottom of it, but yeah, I agree.
Like Yoda said, Dooku has gone down a dark path, one where he tries to where he uses like deception and misleading information to, I guess, to like seduce people into that ideology. So so I don't think Qui-Gon would have fallen for that. But
yeah, I agree.
Anakin and Padme, they make it to Geonosis, and they have this weird like fumbling entrance where they go into the caves and they fall into this factory thing, and it's a scene I've never liked. Like, even when I was a kid, I always thought it was a dumb scene. And it's not like a really dumb scene. Like, I can understand, like, this is the droid making factory, and this is where they put the heads on, and this is where they have buckets of lava, and this is where I always found it a very cartoony scene. How do you feel about that?
That scene doesn't bother me. I would say, like, all the major scenes don't bother me. The parts that bother me are some of the in-betweens. The relationship development between Anakin and Padme is kind of awkward, but not in a natural way. Like, it's
forced. It totally is forced.
Yeah. It's like not organically awkward, but yeah, they're making their way through this factory, and
it's almost like this movie's trash compactor scene. but it doesn't have the chemistry of the original trilogy cast at all.
So yeah, they get caught, and right before they get brought out into the arena, this is where Padme professes her love to Anakin, which, like, before that moment, like, didn't get that at all. Didn't really, like, yeah.
I'm telling you, it's like Stockholm Syndrome with Padme. Like, she was totally, like, brainwashed by this guy's, like, overbearing infatuation with her. You know, it's tough, and I think Lucas was put into a hard position where he made Anakin too young in the first movie to have any real chemistry with Padme. And then in this movie, it's him playing catch-up, because by the end of the movie, he wants Anakin and Padme to be married together, so that, you know, their arc in the next film makes sense. You know, they're a married couple, she's pregnant and stuff. But yeah, so he has a lot of, like, catching up. But the problem is, I don't think that Hayden Christensen or
Natalie Portman
have any actual chemistry. It doesn't seem like that anyway, or at least the direction of the film didn't push them towards, like, working together very well. So I don't know, it's a really weird, awkward relationship the whole way through, and I think the film suffers from it because I never buy it.
Do you think that instead of it being, like, separated, like it had to be a trilogy, that they should have had a fourth movie to kind of add more development?
You know, I don't understand. I do and I don't. I like the idea of the trilogy. Like, a strong trilogy is like a really, it's fantastic. You know, like the Indiana Jones trilogy. The fourth one didn't really add anything to it. It really kind of muddied the story a little bit. But you get, like, strong trilogies in Hollywood. But nowadays, with stuff like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, a trilogy isn't what it used to be. You know?
Right. And I feel like it's hard to do long-term storytelling in a movie unless you're spreading it over, you know, over more movies. Like in the MCU, they're able to do the you know, Infinity Gauntlet and Infinity Wars really over an entire span of movies. So, like, it was a story contained, like, it was an overarching story that was spread out over all these other stories. But I feel like where TV is now, that TV can do a better job at better storytelling.
Yeah, at least more nuanced and, like, character development wise and stuff. But there is something to be said about a movie. You know, there some forms of long form media really lend themselves to the screen, and Star Wars is something that I think will always have its place on the big screen. Even though we have, like, successes with Mandalorian and some of the animated shows, Star Wars has and always will, like, be foremost a thing for movies. And
right. But I think aside from the whole issue with CG, that what they were trying to do in the prequel films is that, you know, they're trying to spread so much within 3 films, and it was just not enough.
Especially when it comes to the Anakin and Padme arc. I think that was the most important thing that they had to do, aside from figuring out how Anakin became Darth Vader. That was, like, number one most important thing on Lucas's to-do list. But when it came to Padme and Anakin, I think that there needed to be more development. Like, it would have somehow been better, I don't know, if Anakin was older in the first movie, or if they were, like, a similar age, where there could have been some chemistry, you know, by the time that the second movie rolled around, and Padme already had some feelings for Anakin at the start. But, you know, you go into Attack of the Clones, and it you know, presumably it spans, like, maybe a week's time, and they fall in love with each other, and I think because it's so forced, because the story requires them to fall in love with each other in the span of the one movie, in the span of 2 hours, that it just doesn't sell it. And I think maybe if they did have, like, a movie in between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, and it took place somewhere in the Clone Wars era, that could have been a good opportunity for them to explore the relationship more, for it to be more real to us.
Yeah, I think that this is why I enjoy Clone Wars so much, is that it ties up a lot that's like left undone in that original prequel trilogy, and I think that that's why I have a little bit more connection with that than Rebels. I enjoy Rebels a lot. I think that Rebels is it's a completely, like, it's a fantastic cartoon series, and it gets way better when you get to like the later seasons. It's going up to the original trilogy, which is like pretty much the cream of the crop. Like, you know, there's maybe some plot holes and some stuff that needed to be tied up in that. But when people look back at the original trilogy, it's really just, people love it. When people look back at the prequel trilogy, people absolutely hate it. And that's a trilogy that I grew up with. And anything that tries to help with that story is good in my book. And let me tell you, those later seasons in Clone Wars, absolutely fantastic. Once you get past the character development and the super kiddie stuff, love it.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said. But we're coming close to 2 hours.
Yeah,
podcast,
I agree.
So let's roll it back. Let's jump ahead to the arena fight, because I have some thoughts on, you know, as they exit into the arena, Padme and Anakin, you know, do that star-crossed lovers type kiss, where they are under the impression that they're probably going to die within the next couple minutes in the arena. So, you know, they kiss, and they get brought over to their pillars next to Obi-Wan. And, you know, Anakin kind of like looks at Obi-Wan kind of shyly, and he goes, "We came to rescue you." And like that classic Obi-Wan wit where he goes, "Good job." And, you know, they're all tied up.
I know. I love, like, and it was like the sarcasm in the voice and like the way he looked, just classic. Ewan is just, he's fantastic for that role. Can't wait to see him in his TV show.
I think he was the strongest actor in the prequels. In my perspective, obviously I love Natalie Portman's work. Like
Christopher
even
Lee too.
Outside of what?
Christopher Lee too. I mean, aside from a couple of moments, but I mean, Christopher Lee
is a fantastic actor, but he does have some scenes where I'm just like, I don't think he's like buying this. Like the scene where he's talking with the other separatists around the table, it doesn't look like he wants to be in that scene, because clearly he's just talking to like CGI characters and there's nobody actually there. So I can tell when he's like annoyed.
I think it's the
camera.
writing for him, because we all know, I mean, we know he can act. It's just the writing has to be right for him.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. So back to the fight in the arena. The fight's about to begin, and Anakin and Obi-Wan are talking, and blah blah blah. Obi-Wan gives Anakin some advice, and Anakin's like, "What about Padme?" And he goes, "Oh, I think she's on top of things." And they turn around, and like she's climbing up the pole, and it's so
Classic
great.
pun.
This scene is so good because it shows their three styles of cunning. It shows their three styles of attack, and this is the first time I've ever like thought about this. But like, she is very self-sufficient. She'll find her own way. She'll get out of any bind or the binding like on her own terms, and she does. Like she uses I think like a pin that she had in her mouth to get out of the restraints, and she climbs up to a better vantage point. That's like totally her style. Then Obi-Wan on the other end of the arena is, you know, he's waiting for his opponent to attack, which is, you know, what he does with Vader, which is what he does with Darth Maul, which is like it's totally his style. Darth Maul, not in Phantom Menace, but in, you know, Rebels, when, well, yeah, he allows he allows the monster, I forget all the monsters' names, but
Right.
he allows the monster to jab at his restraints and like break the chain, while Anakin is very domineering. He wants to take control of the fight, so he jumps onto the bull, wraps the chain around him like a harness, or like reins, and or like a lasso almost, and like bull fights him to the point where the chain breaks off the thing. So it kind of shows their three personalities coming out in the way that they break free from their restraints, and it's something I've never thought about until like I was watching it this time through. But yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So
she can't do that. Shoot her or something.
Yeah, I know, right? And then Dooku's just like, be patient, she will die. Yeah, so they're going through this. They do take their licking. They get beat up a little bit. They bring out some droids, right? In this moment, this is where they like bring out some droids.
Yeah, this is when they bring the droids out.
And then this is where Mace Windu comes up and he says, "This party's over." Such a Samuel L. Jackson thing to say.
It really is, though. I like it though.
Yeah, no, for sure. And this is where it's revealed that so many Jedi, like it looked like the entire Jedi Order was there. And yeah, they have like this massive battle between the Jedi and the droids. And I both love this scene and I hate it at the same time.
Why?
Watching it yesterday, like the parts that I hated was like the really bad CG. But the action and the fighting is what I actually really enjoyed about it. Like the moments where you can notice the bad CG, it's like, man.
I really like the fact that it's a bunch of Jedi fighting. We've never seen a fight like this with Jedi before. So this is a unique moment, and I remember being in the theater, and this is one of the moments that like I'll always remember in theaters thinking like, holy crap, it's about to go down. And you see lightsabers like lighting up all over the arena, like how did you guys just get here? And like nobody saw you roll in. But they start fighting, and eventually they get cornered. A lot of Jedi die, actually. Like a lot of Jedi died in that scene. Yeah. And Yoda eventually rolls in with his newfound clone army. So that's pretty cool. Where'd you get that, Yoda?
Yeah, I know. He comes in. Because the Jedi were about to get shot up because they had stopped that fight for a little while, and Dooku told him, give up now, and we'll let you live. And Samuel Jackson, he wasn't gonna do that. He said no. And then Yoda comes in, just out of nowhere, huge. Like the thing that gets me is that you see him coming in, but not only is he coming in, you see these entire destroyers like entering they're in the atmosphere already. It's like, how did you not notice that up there?
Yeah, like
did you not notice that being up there? Like,
does your planet have like no like sensors to determine when there's a threat nearby, or you're supposed to have this secret base, so you would have these sensors like blaring, right? But whatever. I mean, there's only so many criticisms you can throw at a movie, but
so this is when the Clone Wars starts.
And Yoda actually says that line, "Begun, the Clone Wars has," and so yeah. Oh, so then let's jump forward and talk about the fight with Anakin and Obi-Wan and Count Dooku and Yoda.
Let's do it.
I mean, again, it goes with Anakin's fight style, where he's domineering and he wants to take charge, and he's always like head first in battle, and that's like ultimately his undoing, and their undoing, because together they could have taken him, but he's Anakin, and he clearly fell into the trap because he got force lightninged into oblivion.
Right, and I like it when he's fighting Obi-Wan. When he says to Obi-Wan, he's like, "Oh, Yoda's held you in high esteem," and then like they like hit each other, and he's like, "Surely you could do better."
Right,
it's
dude,
so
he's
video
like,
gamey.
He's egging like
He's
Obi-Wan
like egging
on.
him on, and like that moment, it reminds me of those like in a video game when you're fighting a boss and like the boss is like heckling you.
Right, yeah, it's totally what that is. Yeah, so that was fun. That's a good scene. Anakin gets his arm chopped off shortly thereafter, which is a weird cut because like they're like doing their little dance, and then like Anakin stops moving for like a second, and you can tell it's choreographed poorly. You know, like you can tell like because nobody.
Right, like it wasn't like it wasn't in like emotion. He almost looked like he was T-posing.
Yes, and then like that half second of delay, Dooku chops his arm off, and yeah, so Anakin loses his first arm, one of many.
One of many limbs.
Yeah, dude, that guy loses a lot of limbs.
Oh man, this guy. But yeah, this is where your boy comes in.
Yes, you want to talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah. I thought you were gonna want to talk about it since that was your favorite boy for so long.
All right, yeah, sure. I'll talk about him. Yoda.
Well, I'll bring in this. I'll bring in the moment. So yeah, Dooku looks like he threw it down. You know, he's gonna take out a couple of Jedis, but enters in a third contender, and this is Dakota's boy.
Yeah, so
let's talk about it.
All right, so yeah, Yoda, he comes in with his cane, and I love that because, yeah, Yoda comes in with his cane. He's clearly struggling. You know, he's walking with a limp. He's got his walking stick, and he's old. He's decrepit. He's almost 900 years old at this point, and you know it's about to go down. But as soon as he starts using the Force, like he like opens his cape and like draws on, he draws his lightsaber, like Harry saying "Accio," but like he pulls it into his hand with the Force. Like he doesn't even have like he doesn't have the patience in that moment to like just grab it. Like he wants to show that he's got style. Like after all these years, he's still got style, and. Yoda goes hard.
I know, for somebody who's like just limping moments earlier.
Well, what I love about that is that he doesn't use the Force to better himself, if that makes sense. Like he's not using it frivolously to help with the wear and tear of age. You know, like he still struggles on a daily basis, and he doesn't allow the Force to aid him, even though he clearly has the ability to allow the Force to boost his strength and stuff like that. But when he's in the fight, he allows the Force to loosen him up or whatever it does.
Yeah.
And he starts hopping around like a cat. I don't know. So I like that moment for a couple reasons, but I like that it's a contest between Dooku and Yoda for a little bit. They're sparring. They're using Force abilities. They're seeing who the stronger person is, and then Dooku's like, clearly, we're not gonna figure this out through our skill with the Force, but with the skill of our lightsaber.
Right. Yeah, that was like a crazy moment. There's like just standing there, looking at each other, using Force ability. Well,
It's a wizard battle.
Yeah, really, and Yoda. In all seriousness, like Yoda really wasn't doing anything. He was just deflecting everything. It was all Dooku doing everything. I do like the thing that I like, and it shows how powerful Yoda is. Where that second lightning attack that he takes from Dooku, he just like he like grabs it with his hand and just shrinks it.
Yeah.
Until it disappears.
I wonder, actually, because that was like the first thing that Yoda did in that fight. And before that, we see that he's limping into the scene, and that's the first thing that he does is like absorb the power, or like the force ability that the force lightning that Dooku did, and he kind of like balled it up. And I wonder if he like absorbed the ability into himself, and that allowed him to like get that boost of energy that he needed to fight Dooku throughout the fight. I don't know, maybe I'm looking into that too much, but there is a difference between Yoda like limping in with a cane and him jumping around like crazy, you know, like
yeah,
he was clearly boosted by the force in some way, whether it was the force lightning or just the lightning that, or just the force that he called him upon. Basically, it wasn't really like a decisive win on either party's part.
Right. Dooku kind of plays dirty and tries to knock down. He goes to knock down this like thing down on Anakin and Obi-Wan, and Yoda has to stop fighting to save them, and then this is where Dooku gets away.
Yeah, no, he realizes that he's probably gonna lose, and so he plays dirty. But yeah, so that's pretty much the extent of like all the cool scenes in Attack of the Clones. At the end, we see Anakin and Padme back on Naboo. They are having their wedding ceremony. C-3PO and R2, which we haven't talked about in this thing yet so far, are with them.
Yeah, they have a couple moments in this film.
Yeah, like die Jedi die,
and what a drag. What a drag. I mean, the puns were real in this movie.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I liked that he had like a cool metal hand. It was like really, I don't know, they made it like extra shiny, not like Luke's hand.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then we see Sidious and Tyrannus, you know, or Tyrannus or Dooku gives Sidious the plans for the Death Star, and that's kind of like the cliffhanger right there, is that like the plans that they were making on Geonosis would eventually culminate in the Death Star that we see in the original trilogy.
Yeah. And
that's Attack of the Clones. That's it. And I think that's it. I think that's our discussion of Attack of the Clones. What are your any final thoughts, Anthony? Is this the best Star Wars movie?
It is the absolute best Star Wars film that you could ever watch. Action-packed, story-driven, filled with all the puns you want and need in your life. And
I totally agree. And you know what? In a very real sense, you're absolutely right. It is the best Star Wars movie. And I think it gets a lot of undeserved flack. Obviously, it has flaws. Obviously, there's a lot of like chemistry that's necessary for like the proper story arcs that just is lacking in these movies, and it's clearly rushed. You know, this is a middle chapter that's trying to bridge the first and the third in a way that's meaningful, but in a lot of ways it isn't. But I really appreciate the effort that goes into or that went into it. I liked the story for what it was, and I liked most of the individual scenes that were in it. You know, it just, for whatever reason, it just doesn't come together as well as it should. But I still have a huge fondness for the movie for what it is and how, you know, I grew up with it, you know? So
right.
That's my thoughts on it.
I agree. I do believe that while it does have its flaws, that it's not the absolute worst thing that you can watch. I've seen a lot of bad movies out there, and Attack of the Clones is not that. Could they have done a lot better, or could it have George Lucas done a lot better with this film? Of course. But I think that he tried to do the best that he could with what he had technology-wise. He was trying to be cutting edge. He was essentially trying to do what Favreau and Dave Filoni did for The Mandalorian, except the technology wasn't 100% there back then.
Yeah, I kind of wish it was, because I think that we would have gotten a lot cooler or more dynamic scenes than what we did receive. But, you know, this movie and the prequels in general were huge influencers on the way Hollywood made movies after the fact with its green screen technology. So, yeah. I mean, it was a game changer. It just wasn't the game changer that he wanted. Or he needed, I should say. All right. With that being said, thank you for listening to episode 26 of Project Geekology. It's 11:43 for us, and I think we're both tired and ready for bed. So, we're going to call it a night here.
All right, everyone. Have a great rest of your week, and join us back here next Monday for an episode of whatever it is that you choose.
Yeah, so we'll have a poll on our Twitter at pgeekology and on our YouTube channel, Geekritique, so that you can vote in for what you want to listen next week. All right, guys. Have a good one.
Bye.